Hello, welcome back to Radical Podcast. I'm Ryan McKenna, and I'm here to bring you more radical ideas, radical perspectives, and ideas about radical action and radical change that we can bring about in our society, in ourselves, in our relationships with other people. Because right now, the way that humans do things, the way we interact with one another, the way that we structure our societies, the way that we treat one another is really backwards. It's really dysfunctional, causes a lot of pain, a lot of suffering for a lot of people. We can do better. We're more clever than this. And we have the information available. We're definitely smarter than blaming one another for things that aren't our fault. We're definitely smarter than taking revenge on people when they do something wrong. We know that these things are wrong in that context. And yet, as a society, we still put people in horrible situations for things they had no control over on a regular basis, and we say, well, it's your fault. So if you haven't already picked up on it, I'm going back to my first episode with this one. My first episode was titled The Problems with Free Will. And in this episode, I'm going to discuss once again the problems with free will, because I don't want you to have to go and switch to the other episode and then come back. I can run through some of the ideas pretty quickly. If you want to hear more, then by all means, check out the first podcast, first episode. It's only, I think, about 12 minutes long, so it's not that bad. This episode is going to be longer, though, because I also want to talk about the implications of giving up the idea, the illusion of free will. Letting go of it. As a society, as a species. In order to build a better world. And it really is the key to building a better world. It's not the only one, but it's a big piece of the puzzle. It's a big piece of where we're going wrong. And I'll try to emphasize that to you. I know it's a hard topic to listen to. I do. I know it creates this visceral reaction within people where it's, it's a lot to take in. That, if you've believed that you have free will your entire life, and all of a sudden you're being told you're not actually deciding anything for yourself, it is a lot to take, I understand. But the whole point of this podcast, the whole point of radical change in what we're doing, is to stop living in illusions. To give them up for something better, for the truth, or at least as close to the truth as we can possibly get. To get as close to the truth as we can possibly get, we have to use all the tools and all the information available to us, and we can't exclude information on the basis that we don't like the implications or we don't like the consequences of it. We have to accept it if it makes sense, whether we like it or not. It's not about which ideas we like the most. It's about which ideas make sense, which ideas work, which ideas add some common sense, some framework, some rationality to human behavior, to human society. Free will does not add any clarity whatsoever to how we understand ourselves or how we understand other people, and it's because it doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to go into a few reasons why free will does not make sense. Like I say, if you want to listen to others, you can go back to my podcast. There's the No Free Will podcast. You can check them out on Twitter or on their website. Just Google search No Free Will podcast. Sam Harris has books on this stuff. In addition to many, 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 many other authors. Just Google determinism. So, I'm just going to go through a few. And I'm going to build it on the foundation of what I've been trying to get across throughout almost, well, I would say every episode of this podcast to date. Connection. I've discussed in lots of other episodes how we are all fundamentally interconnected with one another. Not just with one another, but with everything in the universe. Everything that exists, you are part of. Consider that you are crammed, your constituent particles, the energy that is you, the matter that is you, all of that stuff. It was all crammed down, if we believe in the Big Bang, into something, the whole universe. It was all compressed into something, the size of a grain of rice? Whatever, some infinitesimally small size compared to the infinitely large size that it is in this present moment, at least so far as we perceive it. You were all a part of that. It was all one thing then. If it's expanding, if it's getting larger and growing outwards or blowing up, it's still all one thing, it's just bigger. If you blow up a balloon, it doesn't stop being a balloon, it's still one thing. Interconnection is the reason why free will doesn't make sense. It is the reason why we have to start seeing ourselves as interdependent and interconnected. And these two things are mutually exclusive, free will and interconnectivity. Because if you are connected to everything else, meaning everything you do affects everything else in the universe, and everything that happens in the universe affects you, which is, insofar as we can tell, how it works. Everything that happens on this planet affects you. Moreover, all of the water flows through you. It becomes lakes and rivers and streams and rain and snow and so on and so forth, and you drink it, and it goes through you and goes back to being lakes and rivers and streams and so on and so forth. We're all part of this. Everything is going through us. Our food is life flowing through you and back into life, staying life the whole way through. But it means that you change. You change as you expel one thing and take in another. You are a swirling vortex, a process. You're not a static thing. You're not an automaton, a robot walking around in your life where your constituent parts stay the same and wear out. It's not how it works. You are a dynamic process. You are more like a whirlpool than you are like a rock, if that makes any sense. Because you are things flowing in and things flowing out, and it is the very flow of those things that makes the shape of you. Just like it is the very flow of water that makes the shape of a whirlpool. If you stop the flow, the shape stops. So because you are part of this overarching flow, the notion that you could act independently from that is, using your own will, exerting your own will, imposing your own will, the notion that you could do that is the notion that you are able individually to control everything else in the universe. It doesn't work that way. It can't work that way. What you have is an interplay. You have a constant interplay of systems in this world. You have weather systems, you have water systems, you have power systems, electrical systems that humans built. You have all the other life forms, which are all their own systems. You have physics and biology and chemistry all working together to make each moment. Each moment that we live in is a product of everything working together. It cannot be you independently. Whatever you do because you are acted upon by everything. And there's an interplay in that. Everything that happens to you creates a reaction from you, whether you're aware of it or not. Everything that comes into your mind from your environment changes the structure of your mind, changes the composition of it. If light hits your eyes, that causes neurotransmitters to fire, creating thought and imagery. That means that your environment just changed your brain. It changed your mind in that moment. You didn't have any choice in it. And if your reaction to that is to close your eyes, to not let anything in, well, your very closing of your eyes is an involuntary reaction to my saying what I just said. We are reactionary creatures. We operate on feedback systems through our senses. More than that, we're connected not only to one another and not only in terms of physics, but in terms of physiology. When you breathe, you're breathing in what the plants have produced through photosynthesis. That's how we're able to breathe. The Amazon rainforest is known as the lungs of the planet. Isn't that telling? The planet has lungs that allow us to breathe. So if our organs are not sufficient on their own to keep us alive, and we are therefore dependent on external organs the size of a forest, it means that that's part of us, because we cannot exist without that. Whatever you are dependent upon is an extension of you, and you are interdependent with everything. That means it's all an extension of you. Me, you, everything. Free will is not a sensible component in this. It's not a necessary component in this. We're talking about the interplay between all systems in the universe playing on all other systems. If we start seeing humanity as a system and the individuals within it as systems, then we can see how all of that interplay produces behaviors. For example, within the human social system that we are interacting with as individual systems, we have poverty. And poverty has been proven to cause stress. Now, the nature of stress, especially when it's in relation to scarcity, namely scarcity of things that you need to live, like food and shelter and water and protection from the elements and so on and so forth, love and nurturing. When those things become scarce, humans have a biological reaction to that, and it is involuntary. If you believe that you are in an insecure state, then you naturally, biologically, with absolutely no control or willpower over it, will produce more cortisol, more testosterone or more progesterone, more adrenaline. Why? Because your state of stress, because you're lacking in the basic necessities of life, is changing your brain through those chemical reactions. And it's making you believe that you are in a threatening environment. It's making your mind, your body chemistry believe that you're in a threatening environment, as though you're surrounded by predators and you can't find a place to live. So it's going to give you that edge through that cortisol, that steroid, that testosterone, that adrenaline to defend yourself, to protect yourself, to give you the energy you need to find food, to find shelter, or to take it if necessary. It provokes fight or flight responses, which, if we were still living in forests, would be wonderful. But we don't live in forests, we live in human society. It doesn't work for us anymore. And it's an excellent example of how there is no free will. If there was free will, then in a situation like that, we would have the ability to prevent ourselves, our minds, from changing. Because if your mind can be changed by your environment, then you don't have any will, which is how it is. We are directed by many, many forces in this world. I'm going to talk just for a very brief second about all the things that shaped who you are. And remember, who you are is the collection of experiences and lessons and what have you that you have gone through in your life. It is everything that makes you you. And I'm going to go through all of the things that shape that you had no control over. Starting with who your parents are, when you were conceived, when you were born. Were you born preterm, post-term? Were you well nourished? Were you breastfed or were you formula fed? Were you overprotected, underprotected? Were you in a stressful environment? Was there screaming? Was there yelling? Did you have siblings or no siblings? Where did you live? What city was it? What country was it? Are you a boy or a girl? What friends did you have growing up that you met in daycare or preschool or through your parents? What school did you go to? How much help did you get at home with your homework? Were you allowed to watch TV or not allowed to watch TV? Did you read or did you not read? Were you introduced to reading or not introduced to reading? Did you suffer loss as a child? Suffer abandonment? Suffer trauma? Torture? Sexual abuse? All of these things. All of them. Everything that happened to you as a child and up till now, you had no control over. All of those formative moments, those things that instilled in you what you believe now to be true, and your brain chemistry now, and your habits now, the way you react to things. All of those things were shaped over time by firing those same neural pathways over and over and over, depending on the environment you were in. You didn't have a choice. You didn't have control. And you don't now. That's just a very small list of the things that you have no control over. There are vastly more, and most of them have to do with you yourself. With your own body's mechanisms. With your environment and the information that you interact with. It's not a matter of choice and it's not a matter of will. And not having free will does not mean that you are not free. You are just as free as you've always been. That's the point. You don't need free will to feel comfortable in your life. You don't need free will to be good and to be moral. It's not a necessary component. If you've been good and moral up until this point, you've been doing it already without free will. Because free will, there's no evidence for it. There's nothing to support it. Everything supports the opposite. Everything supports fundamental interconnection of all things. Everything supports interdependency. And that separation is an illusion. So if separation is an illusion, so is free will. So long as you haven't shut this thing off by now, because as you can tell, I'm getting into it. I hope you don't feel like I'm yelling at you. It's something that I believe strongly is holding us back. This belief in something with absolutely no basis in reality whatsoever, aside from a sense of comfort and the understanding that we observe decisions happening. And we mistake our observation and we mistake our thoughts about the observation for the decision itself. We think because we see a decision forming or we see the rationalization for a decision happening that we made the decision. We didn't make the decision. Our minds formulated why the decision was made. They've actually shown through brain imaging that humans are aware of their decisions after the decision has actually been made. You're not aware of the decision until something like milliseconds after the decision's already formulated in your brain. But our brains put things in reverse order because it makes sense for them that way. They do this a lot, incidentally. Your brain reorders things all the time to make it make sense inside. The way you see the world is not necessarily how the world is. It's how our five senses, actually we have more than five senses, but you know what I mean, interpret it all with the help of our neural processing center, our brains. So free will is not compatible with this. Our entire society is built on the assumption that we have free will. Our justice system, particularly, but our society. Once we accept that no one has free will, it makes absolutely no sense to blame anyone for anything ever again. No sense whatsoever. It makes no sense to judge. It makes no sense to dislike. It makes no sense to be unkind. And it certainly makes no sense to penalize people or to take revenge on them for something they had no choice in any case. What we can do, free will or no free will, is we can identify problems within the system and within the interaction of systems. We can identify the dysfunction there, and we can offer solutions. We can collaborate. You don't need free will for any of these things. We do things without free will already. We are motivated by other forces than our own will, our own internal will. We're motivated by nature herself. It's what guides us along our path in life. It's a flow that we're caught up in. And it's nothing bad. It's nothing good. It's just what is. And we need to start accepting what is and to start shedding the illusions. As I say, the implications of there being no free will are profound, and it's something that humanity has to accept sooner or later, is my belief. Unless I'm proven wrong. In which case, I'm proven wrong. So be it. But if I'm not, if this is how it is, and if no one can find a logical flaw in this, then we have to adjust in accordance with the facts, with how things are. We can't have the notion of countries when we know that we're all one, we're all connected, we're all interdependent around the world. We can't have the notion of corporations owning over, 60, 50% of the planet. We can't have that because it's everyone's. We all share it. It all flows through us. Therefore, it is a birthright of every human being. So all of these notions and these ideas and these structures crumble when you take out the idea that we're independent beings, when we take out the idea that we have independent free will, and whether we're not part of a larger process. Well, once you accept that, once you accept that everyone's doing the only thing that they can in each moment, then, as I've said before, you can still intervene to stop harm from happening. You can still intervene to stop dysfunctional behavior. What you should not do is judge that person. What you should not do is blame or seek praise or credit. Because it wasn't you that did it. Whether that thing was judged to be good or bad, it wasn't you that did it. It was a combination of everything. And it's only when we all realize this and start working together to create functional systems as opposed to dysfunctional systems that we're actually going to start creating the type of radical change that will be lasting and that will truly allow us to escape the power structures and the inequality that exist in this world. It'll allow us to truly start behaving with one another compassionately, because we'll recognize that we're just talking to ourselves. We're just dealing with ourselves, another version of ourselves, the ourself that we could have been had we grown up in those circumstances. That we would have been. That you will be. We have to let go. We have to let go of that illusion. We have to let go of the illusion of separation. We have to let go of the illusion of self. We have to let go of nationalism and racism and hatred. Because all of them are nonsense when you look at what really is happening in this world and how things really work and who we really are. What we really are. We are connection at our core. This is a political statement. It's saying that our politics must start to be in accordance with what makes sense, regardless of how much we like it. Regardless of how scared it makes us or uneasy. If it's the truth, it's the truth. So be it. If it's false, it'll come out as false. So be it. We'll continue to debate and exchange ideas until the truth comes out. But we have to examine this notion with an open mind. So I'm calling out to you to examine it with an open mind. Consider that everything we know might be wrong. Everything we do might be wrong. And that we can do it better. That we're smarter than this. We can do it better. I'm going to leave it there for today. Radically yours, I'm Ryan McKenna.